Hey guys, welcome to the LT Brings the Heat podcast. We're your hosts, Sean Laird and Adam Heisler, where we talk about baseball and sports performance. With topics ranging from coaching, business, and player development, our goal is to bring you a no BS approach to development in baseball and sports performance. Hope you guys enjoy. Let's rock and roll. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of LT Brings the Heat. We're your host, Sean Laird and Adam Heisler. We're back again. We had a week off. Adam was down coaching in Florida at the Fall World Series, Fall WWBAs, I believe. How'd that go, Adam?
Man, it was a blast. We went 3-1. Unfortunately, we missed bracket play by one run allowed to make it as a wild card team. So we lost one game in a pool play, and it was to a team that ended up advancing, the St. Louis Pirates. They beat us, and then they actually beat their next game in the bracket play, so they made it to the final 16. But just had one of those games. I think at one point we had a relief pitcher came in. He walked three guys in a row. It was very just weird. It was one of those weird – he's never done it before, and he probably never do it again. And luckily the guy that came in behind him got him out of it, but then the guy that came in behind him 2 innings later, he walked three in a row. So it's kind of a tough situation. You don't really plan for that to happen, so it's not like you have somebody getting hot while you just brought a new pitcher into the game. But, man, just the talent overall down there was insane. I think there was 224 kids that threw 90-plus miles an hour at 17 years old or 16 or 17. It's just insane. It really is a big world out there, and I know we tell our kids all the time, but, like, if you're trying to reach that destination of a big D1 or possibly trying to play pro ball, like, you've got to really, number one, you got to understand what you're going against and where you stack up against guys your age. And we talk about comparing guys left and right, just kind of get a base standpoint of this is where I'm at, this is where I need to be. But I will say that we talk about on here is the stronger physicality-wise guys were the guys that put on shows down there, or the guys that are getting pumped up, drafted as getting all the clout on Perfect Game, all the clout on the Twitter, stuff like that. And it's those kind of physical freaks that are getting the job done. And we talk about it. This is what the scouts look for. How hard do you throw? How fast do you run? How hard do you hit? One of our kids, he had a great time down there. He was a catcher. We'll get into it later, but let's just say he had probably the week of his life, and it may turn his life around, where he was committed to a junior college. And then on Monday, he actually got 3 calls from LSU, Arkansas, Mississippi State. He's a senior. And it's just cool that in this day and age where everybody wants to commit so early, that this guy committed to a junior college, was loyal to them, and then out of nowhere he has the week of his life down there, and now he's getting calls from everybody. He threw like a 1-8 from his knees, got a guy out in the game. He hit a ball. They said it was a record of 118 off the bat at Perfect Game. Wow. Like a record that he broke, 118.3 or something. It was funny, though, afterwards. I was like, hey, Priester. His name is Blaze Priester. In the weight room, you get after it. And he's like, oh, yeah. I said, what do you deadlift? He said, 565. And I'm like, I believe it. You see, like, yes, and he cleans 285, whatever it is. And I'm like, all right, there's a reason you hit like that and throw like that too. So it's nothing new that we talk about on here, but it was just cool to kind of be around those guys and go from that standpoint. We actually gave up a home run to a guy that's going to be an Indiana commit, so I know Mercer will be glad to hear about that. That was one of the hardest balls I've seen hit in a long time. Big physical kid. I think he was a first baseman. He's going to be going there, but he was on that St. Louis Pirates team. But that's what's been going on with me. I hate we missed last week, but it was cool to recap and get going. What about you? What you up to?
Well, we are actually entering in our last week of our fall velo camp, and so it amazes me when we do these camps, and we always transition to a speed camp right afterward, and it's so crazy how fast everything goes. But things are going well. We had a lot of guys PR with a 4-mile-an-hour increase so far. A lot of guys at 3. So in a month, you can't ask for more than that. There's a lot of guys that see that 3 or 4 and they're right at 2. And I'm like, dude, if you could guarantee that I was going to increase 2 mile an hour in 4 weeks, I'd be like, hell yeah, I'm going to do that. But again, it's when we do these camps, and as you guys know, when you guys run into heat, it's, you got to understand and teach in the process. Like everybody, like it's not a steady state increase. If everybody increased 4 or 5 mile an hour every few months, you'd be throwing 150 mile an hour one day. And it's just, I get it. Like everybody's impatient. Everybody wants everything all at once, but it's going to click. It's going to work. As long as you're putting the work in, just like you said with that guy deadlifting. Like, I don't know how many times we've said deadlift is one of the most important things for a baseball player. There's guys that understand that, but I mean, to me, the deadlift and the squat are the 2 hardest exercises in the weight room. And the reason why people don't like doing them is it's because it's too hard for them. So, but, we're going to kind of transfer into this and the listeners here, we're going to kind of talk about hitting a lot today. We're going to talk about little different things that a lot of people struggle with when it comes to trying to follow drills and how to do drills and how to approach training and everything like that. But Adam, why don't you kind of break into like how you train youth hitters and kind of like why the approach needs to be different with youth guys and like what your approach is with youth guys versus the older guys, and what you think kind of needs to be the focus day in and day out.
Yeah, so with our youth guys, we try to develop bat speed and aggressiveness in the box, explosiveness, just help them understand that, number one, be athletic. We don't try to keep it very simple. We keep it simple, but we don't. So it's not an ABC, you have to do this to get there. It's more of a, hey, we're going to try to swing as fast as we can, as quick as we can. We're going to really focus on turning the barrel, not pushing the barrel. And then after that, we're going to focus on keeping our head down and keeping our balance. And that's kind of the magic stuff that we do for the young kids, that we don't overload them with information, because we'll have a lot of them that come through and they hear about success we're having with the older guys and they want to dive right in. And I'm like, first, you have to dominate the basics. If you can dominate the basics, you can play this game for a long time. So we don't take the athleticism away from them. I think a lot of hitting instructors, especially with the U ages, really focus on hitting the ball bat to ball, which is important. I'm not saying it's not, but don't get so caught up into, you have to make sure you make contact with every single pitch, because you're going to teach them to kind of not swing as hard, to maybe just try to poke at the ball. You're not going to help them understand how to move fast. And what we compare it to is, let's try to build the gas, and then we'll get the steering direction down as we continue to get older. Whereas don't start off with the steering direction with no gas, where now you just are a really good driver, but you have a really slow car. And because that's not supposed to play at the higher levels. You're going to have to develop bat speed, athleticism, explosiveness, and then we're going to get the direction down with it. So with the youth guys, it's very simple, very basic of the three main principles that we just talked about. And then as they continue to make that transition, I would say probably that transition starts maybe 12, 13, when they have a little bit more body awareness, body control. And we'll start to add some stuff into there of learning how to load the rear hip the right way, of continue to learn how to turn the barrel, not push the barrel. With my swing, staying through the ball, not getting around my ball with my shoulders. And I think more than anything is keep it fun at the young ages, because to steer a kid off in the wrong direction is to, number one, you be so hard on them about making contact and, hey, you can't swing and miss, keep your head on the ball. Like, we're all going to swing and miss. It happens every day. I mean, you have an 18-year-old in here right now. He might swing and miss during BP, he might swing and miss off the hack attack, whatever it is don't get so caught up into the result every single time. Of keep it fun for them, keep it where they're not taking away their athleticism for them. And then the last thing I'll touch on and slide it over to you is, like, we don't have any like magical drills here. Like, we have some drills, but it's not like anything that's mind blowing. Like, you have to do this one in order to hit 15 home runs. Like, we're going to do drills. We're going to have them because I think they're important on developing repetition and swing path and body control and balance. But it's not like we have one or two that we'll post on social media just to see how many likes we can get to say, like, this is the one we got to do out there, because we talk about it all the time. It's just because you see it on social media or see it on YouTube doesn't necessarily mean it's right. So you've got to be very careful about trying to watch stuff and trying to add that into your routine. Number one, figure out why athlete is doing it or why the coach is teaching them to do it. Don't just see somebody do it and then try to copy it, because you're probably going to do it the wrong direction because you don't really know what's all going into it. So, but that's kind of our philosophy here. What about with you, with your younger hitters? What is it you really like to focus on with those guys?
Yeah, so I mean, you hit a lot of points that I kind of approach on with guys. I will say, like, I actually just had a couple of younger guys come in and sign up for memberships here in the last few weeks, and my associate instructor as well. And we see a lot of similarities and a lot of flaw. Like, I would say the majority, if not all of them, have balance issues. They have trouble with the balance, whether it's their head, hips, drifting forward somewhere along the lines, or just not really understanding rhythm and tempo. And because the big thing is, if they don't understand rhythm and tempo or have a rhythm and tempo, balance is already off the table. It's never going to be there. And so I always like to tell guys, like, they're loading at a violent, rapid rate. Everything is so fast. There's no rhythm into an explosive movement. So I always teach them, is like, hey, everything pre-swing is the calm before the storm. Like, we're relaxed, we're smooth, we're staying in our body, we're staying in rhythm. And I always kind of give them, I have this like 7-step rhythm drill where we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to 7, where we're kind of teaching them hip sway and hip load and transfer into the force, and kind of teaching the coil of the lower body, just some real basic movements, and get them off their toes, because a lot of them are on their toes. Get them more the heels, get their heels kind of planted and glued to the ground as well, which is something that we talked about before that I used to never teach 10 years ago. But the big thing is teaching them to get into, like, honestly, I do this with a lot of the older guys too. Like, we got to get them in a good launch position. If we can get them in a good launch position, they're going to be in a good position for success, period. But I would say balance, launch position, because most young guys, as we were just talking about before we came on, they land and that backside drops immediately, like they're trying to elevate the ball, or their head's dropping down. But the balance, the launch position, and then strength. Like I really, really, really focus on strength. And I just posted this last week or the week before or something like that. We do a lot of sledgehammer type slow motion swings or weighted bat slow motion swings just to get some feel. But like you said, when we're actually hitting, we're trying to hit the ball hard. We're trying to hit the ball effective. We're trying to hit the ball gap to gap. We don't want them being too mechanical and robotic, because especially at that age, they soak everything up like a sponge. Like if they do that for too long, next thing they know, they're 14 years old and they got all kinds of weird robotic, just stiff motions. And that's what we got to stay away from. And that's where a lot of people, honestly, when they decide to start lessons, if they decide to start late and they're already 15, 16 years old, if they don't have that foundation of rhythm and tempo, good launch position, being able to control their body and during their swing, they're way behind. Like I've got, and these kids that, like, nothing against kids, but I'll have kids at 14, 15 years old that have the ability of a 12-year-old a lot of times. Yeah. And it's nothing against them. It's just that they're just behind where they need to be. So they've got to play catch up, and somehow they got to play catch up with those same problems, those same points, and able to get going to be able to compete, especially if they want to play college baseball. But it's funny you bring up the social media gurus, because nowadays everybody's on social media talking about this or talking about that, and everybody's always negative too. Like for when it comes from hitting and the strength and conditioning world, I'll say pitching, I see negative stuff, but not as much as hitting, obviously. For me, just at least my perspective, there's negativity on both sides. But there's, like, for people that are listening right now, if you're watching drills on social media, like I post drills on social media, Adam posts drills, I post stuff on YouTube. There's a lot of people that like it, and some people that look at it and go, "What the hell are you doing? What is this? This is the worst thing in the world." And for me, like, when we're watching on social media, we don't understand context. We don't understand what we're trying to do. Like I was doing a drill the other day. I was working on high tee, and I didn't want them to hit a line drive over 10 feet. Mm-hmm. And the reason is I was trying to get their shoulder, their spine angle, and I'm trying to improve those positions because they were collapsing backside, trying to elevate the ball, and they were in and out of zone. Same thing I was just talking about before we got on about lead elbow mechanics and just starting in the zone and just flying right out of the zone. And if somebody watched this and they heard me, "Hey, don't hit the ball higher than 10 feet," somebody could take my words out of context and say, "Laird's trying to teach hitters to hit no line drive over 10 feet. But that's the thing about drills. And the thing that people don't understand is we're trying to fix or alleviate a weakness. We're trying to improve something, or we're trying to teach them a feel. And that there's a difference between feel and real, which we talk about all the time. But there were some drills that I started randomly doing in college, and it completely helped my swing, changed my swing. And not to say that drills are the end all be all. Me personally, I feel like that you can definitely change swings completely with drills, but it has to be done over and over and over. And you have to understand context, because the problem that people make, and you can kind of testify to this, like when you give kids drills and you tell them to start doing them, you have to have the context. You have to have the purpose behind them. You can't just follow somebody on social media and say, "Oh, I'm going to do this drill," and all of a sudden, next thing you know, your swing's bad or your swing's changing. But that's a big thing with me is like you talk about social media guys, they're driven likes, they're driving likes. They want to get people on. And I don't like it when I see guys that are just trying to post things for likes. We talked about before with guys talking about recruiting players and stuff. For me, my issue is like, if you're a guy watching, if you're watching me, or if you're watching Adam, you need to sit there and like, what is he trying to do here? Ask the questions inside and try to figure it out. Actually read. I can't tell you how many guys watch a video of mine and they don't read the the wording and what it's supposed to be about. Oh my God. But yeah, it is what it is.
Exactly. And there's like a little basic protocol I like to do with hitters, and especially new hitters that are coming in. Like there's a kid that came in from Jackson, Mississippi the other night. He has worked with the hitting guy up there. He was coming down here to play a tournament. He got in contact, so we were able to get together. And I've never been around the kid, but seeing him, I'd watched his swing. I had video of him, and he had a good swing already. And so when he comes in, like, we're going to go over some things, but he may have taken one or two things that I said, and that's all he needed, where it wasn't like, "Oh man, I have to try to impress this guy because he drove 4 hours away and tell him he needs to do this one just to kind of fix this one little thing there." With him, he was doing the collapse the back shoulder a little too early. So simply walked up to him, And I couldn't see it until I saw the side camera. And when he would land in his launch position, the back shoulder was already going down while the front was going up before I would even release the pitch. So now he's in the standpoint of he's committing to a pitch without knowing location, pitch height, or anything like that. So that's what was throwing him off. So for him, it was, hey, think more level shoulders as you land. And then when you swing, you'll tilt naturally because that's how your swing is built. Yep. Sure enough, it clicked for him. It went off, and he's like, "Man, it felt great." So that was his one little thing, but it wasn't like I said, going back to it, if I have to throw this magical thing at him in order for him to be like, "Man, that was well worth the drive going down there." But like, there's 7 quick steps I like to try to watch with hitters, and number one is the issue is it calls about an approach. Like, what is your approach? Do you have one? A lot of times that's where I'm going to go first before I get with anybody else about mechanics standpoint. After that, is it a timing issue? We talk more about than anything is if you're not on time, you're not going to be a good hitter. If you struggle to get on time, you're not going to be a good hitter if you're inconsistent. So it's, do you get on time 99% of the time, 90% of the time? You got to figure it out right there. Is your timing issue? Is there a mobility issue? Maybe you physically can't get into this spot, so you don't need to do that anymore. Maybe your hips are turned inward. Maybe they're turned outward. That's what dictates where your feet need to be lined up. Is there a mobility issue? Then the next one, is there a strength issue? Are you have a really good swing, you just are 98 pounds and you don't have enough behind you right now, like strength-wise, to do that? Do you not deadlift? Do you not throw medicine balls? Do you not squat? All right. Another thing with maybe this correlates more to college pro hitters is the hitter tired? Is the hitter worn out and doesn't realize it? Where we talk about on here, work hard, but you got to work smart too. Because if you come in and you had a killer day in the weight room and then you're trying to swing, you might actually hurt yourself more than help yourself, because you might start creating a bad habit because you're tired and you don't realize it, or you might have yourself be exposed to an injury too. So that can happen as well. And then after that, we'll go into video slow-mo swings to try to watch them and see if there's a flaw there that we can find. And then finally, we'll go check. We use blast motion here, and we'll check some of their numbers just to see where they're at. But that's where I like to be on the last step, not the first step. A lot of people right away will, hey, we're going to put the sensor on you, and this is going to tell us everything we need to know. And I just don't believe in that standpoint. That's why we talk about on here is bridging the gap together of old school and new schools. Let's let that be the last piece of the puzzle as opposed to being the first piece, because all the other stuff that we just listed were more important, in my opinion, to figure out what is going on, because we've seen guys that have the best swings in the world that can't hit when the game is here. They don't see the ball. They swing at balls. They take strikes. Like, there's just so much more that goes into it. So challenge yourself, those that are listening, to start doing that with your own hitter or with other guys on the team. If you're a coach, go from that kind of little checklist to see where everything's going on there, because there's a bigger picture to everything. But what I'm seeing more than anything, and yes, we can both agree we like hitting the ball hard in the air, line drive, backspin the ball in the gap. But with guys trying to elevate so much that instead of their swing elevating the ball, they're trying to elevate it so much with their body that they're already committed to the pitches, like I was mentioning earlier with the guy from Mississippi, of committing down to try to make the ball go up. And we're seeing a lot of flares and slices to the right side, opposite field. So if it's a lefty, left side, or we're swinging them swing underneath the ball. There was a guy this past week that we had worked with. I'd been around him for 3 weeks in a row, and all I could see was swings money. He's athletic, his approach is there. He was literally missing under the ball. And so for him, it was, hey, quit committing so early to the pitch. And he's a shorter guy, so you have to eliminate that top part of the strike zone right now. Don't go fishing up there, because you're not going to have success with it, especially with the guys that were wood bat pumping 90 plus. Like that high fastball, you're not going to be able to get to there anymore. So lower your sights, make him come down in your zone, and then you're going to be ready to go from that position. But those are kind of some steps that I like to list with guys to really try to see what's going on with the hitter. And notice there I didn't mention anything about a drill, because we've got to find the issue first before we start the drill. I think a lot of people will jump right into drills from a standpoint of, hey, you've got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this, and then the hitter doesn't even know why they're doing them. So number one, just have a purpose with it, and then number two, make sure that hitter needs to do this drill, not just to do it just to waste time, or just to, hey, everybody else has done it, you got to do it too. And so guys that are implementing these things into their training is just make sure there's a purpose behind it. Same thing goes in the weight room, same thing goes with throwing. It's all, there's got to be a reasoning behind this, not just I'm just doing it because my coach is telling me to do it.
Yeah, that honestly, that when I was growing up, the biggest mistake that I made early, and when I say growing up all the way through high school, is I would just hit, and I really wasn't like, I was just doing reps when I would hit, and I would be soft toss, tee work, and maybe I would do some BP depending on who was with me. Most of the time I was hitting by myself. So or my dad growing up until I had a car to have a buddy come with me. And that the thing is like you can waste, I don't want to say waste a lot of time, but you can spend a lot of hours not necessarily improving the best you can improve because you're just going through the motions or you're just doing activity and calling it productivity. And that's the issue. And I will say one of the best things that I did when I did not knowing is I would get on the tee and I would set the ball up on every location where it would be on the plate, high, low, it doesn't matter where it is. And I would try to make sure that I was proficient at every single location. That's something, one thing that's a pet peeve of mine nowadays is like, kids don't do tee work correctly. And some of them don't do tee work at all. Like I'll ask a kid like, hey, like how often do you tee work? Never. Mm-hmm. Like how can you control your body and know what you're doing or work on certain pitches if you're never doing tee work, unless your BP thrower is throwing at all 9 locations? Like, I mean, it's not going to work out. Like you got to work on those spots. And also soft toss. Like one thing that I did do that, you know, I think that really benefited me with rhythm is soft toss. And my dad wasn't a baseball guy. He was a football boxer. And so we would do soft toss all the time. And it helped me so much with rhythm and getting the foot down, like you're saying, with timing. Like even though we're not having somebody throw to us, I always call it, you know, not no linear type hitting when somebody's coming to us, you know, I was still getting rhythm. I was still working on learning separation, getting my low down, getting my foot down, making sure I'm in a good launch position, obviously unknowingly at the time. But nowadays kids don't even know how to do soft toss. Like I'm like, hey, I'll try to demonstrate a drill. Hey, give me a soft toss. And the ball's like, dude, what? You just threw it behind me? Like, what are you doing, dude? Like, it blows my mind the amount of kids that don't have those basic abilities. And so, like you just said, man, you know, drills are drills. And there are certain drills that you're doing that are not necessarily, there's no mode. Like we're not trying to change your swing with them. We're not trying to, you know, fix something. We're just trying to help you with a location. So like if I have a drill, like, hey, we got 9 contact drill today and 9-point contact and low and outside, middle away, high and away, high and middle, you know, middle, low middle. And then same thing with low inside, middle inside and high and outside. And we're trying to be proficient with those. Does that mean that you're going to swing at those every single time? No, like obviously you're going to have strengths, but I always tell guys like the better you are at hitting the tough pitches, the pitches that are in your zone, you're going to get better at. You're going to be more proficient in, period. And we work a baseball off the plate inside, a baseball play off the plate outside a lot. And kids are like, why are we doing this? This is a ball. And I go, well, in theory, it's a ball, but they're going to call that a strike at our age level a lot. And I'm not telling you to swing at this. What I'm telling you is if you could turn and hit a ball that's 2 inches inside, hit it hard, stay through the baseball, hit it on a line, how is that middle in or inside pitch going to feel? It's going to feel a lot easier to keep your hands inside to get through, right? If I can stay on this outside pitch, it's a ball outside. How is that outside, that normal outside pitch, is that going to seem further away? No, it's going to seem like you can handle that better. Now, and I tell them, like, I'm not teaching you to swing at this pitch. Now, obviously, if you got 2 strikes and this guy's calling, you know, white to white, chalk to chalk, we got to do what we got to do. But, you know, we want to have the ability to hit all pitches. Now, does it mean we're going to be able to hit all pitches? No, you're going to have cold spots. But you got to work on weaknesses. If you just start working on your strengths and constantly work on your strengths, you know, those weaknesses are going to pile up. And I tell them all the time, like at me as a coach, like if I watch hitters that are going through the lineup and I see weak points, I'm making a mental note or I'm writing down on my note or writing down on my notepad, hey, this kid struggles with curveballs away. Hey, this kid can't hit a fastball inside. And as soon as I see a swing where they're getting beat, we're attacking that dude until he can prove us that he can hit it or at least lay off of it, one of the two. And that's one of those things that I think people really struggle to understand. And that aspect is like, you know, there's a purpose between everything you do. Understand why we're trying to do things. Understand, you know, that when you're on your own, if you just go up and you just hit, no purpose at all, you're not making the gains. You're just reinforcing the same habits, and hopefully it'd be good habits. But a lot of people, bad habits, doing it on your own, just kind of going through the motions.
Yeah, and I mean, I love that you broke down the 9-zone hitting concept because we do the same thing here. Is if I can't hit the ball off the tee with backspin in the direction it's supposed to go, what makes me think I can do that whenever a live pitch is coming? I'm not going to be able to. So I have to train my body to be able to perfect that low and away backspin opposite field, right over second baseman's head if I'm a righty, over a shortstop's head if I'm a lefty. And if I can't do that, I don't need to go on to another pitch because that is my weakness. I've got to continue to train that. We can all hit the ball down the middle, especially high school and up. Like, you better get 10 swings down the middle just to kind of backspin it to the back of the net. But after that, that thing has to move around, or unless you're doing a certain type of drill that you're working on there, the tee has to get moved around. And what I tell guys, it almost is like you're training your brain and your eyes to, when I see this pitch here, my body naturally will get into that position to hit that ball because I've worked so many times repetition wise off the tee.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the tee from the standpoint of we can put it exactly where we want it. Like you said, unfortunately, when a BP guy's throwing, maybe he can't foot it in there exactly where he wants it on the inside corner.
Yep.
So you really get to work on that pitch as much as you think you are working on it. So that's the cool part about the tee that I recommend it to almost anybody out there. And then if you're on your own, you're an only child, or it's you and your dad, like, and he can't throw a BP, use the tee, and then he'll do soft toss. And I love that you mentioned soft toss, because one of my favorite things to do, even when I was playing, was soft toss on the field, so I could really make sure I'm staying right center,
Yep.
left center in that area, and these balls are going straight ahead, backspin, no hook spin, no slice spin, and you're seeing as your bat path on the direction and through the baseball. Because if it's not, it will tell you right away. It'll be the feedback. So soft toss is another lost art. I did it with my high school guys this summer, and we do a soft toss round before we even got into BP at every tournament we showed up at. And they're like, "Coach, man, I hate soft toss. I'm not good at it." You're not good at it because you never do it. That's why all of a sudden we started working it in. And by the end of the summer, all the guys were like, "Man, Coach, I really want to add that to my routine." And I was like, "Good. I think it's the best way to understand letting the ball travel in my window, and I'm staying square and keeping the path all the way through the ball." So we definitely do a lot of the soft toss, and we incorporate that. And it doesn't get used enough, in my opinion. Hey, I had a question asked the other day, and I wanted to ask you about it. So it was a parent. He was, I think, kid's 10 or 11, and he had talked about his kid is walking a lot. And I get at the younger ages, the strike zone, like the pitchers maybe aren't as good as throwing strikes and stuff. And I kind of told him I want his kid to be more aggressive. And I told him I want him to swing more. And even if he strikes out, more like, I'm not saying striking out is okay, but I want the hitter to learn how to develop to hit. And I want to just ask your opinion if that was kind of the right path, because the dad kind of seemed confused at first. And I told him, look, we were looking down the road. I want to develop a kid that is swinging and learning how to hit these pitches. And I could care less if he's walking 10 times on the weekend because he's, quote unquote, has a really good eye. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah, I will. I always say this: when we'll run our scrimmages, and we'll run scrimmages after tryouts with the Bulls, and the kids they'll start running to first base after a walk, and I go, dude, you don't get recruited to walk. So I mean, like, we're not going to play that. Now I'm not saying a walk is a bad thing, because as I actually, as soon as you said that, made me think of Mercer. Mercer's like, in college, walks as good of a hit, which it is. But if you want to play in college, you got to be able to have the ability to hit the baseball. Yeah. And so to me, whenever I have guys at that young age, I've actually been asked that question a couple of times. More often than not, they walk a lot, but they also looking a lot more, or at least more often than they should. And to me, it's just too passive. And it kind of coincides with the kid's personality. He's very passive. I got a softball girl right now. Her mom was telling me, this was a couple of months ago, towards the end of the summer season. And she's like, she's just walking too much. And then she's not getting her pitch. Like she's not pulling the trigger on her pitch. And the problem is that most kids are looking for a perfect pitch and this perfect location, instead of saying, I have the ability to hit these pitches as well. I need to pull the trigger. And that's to me is like, for me, my approach when I'm teaching hitters has got to be center to left center, or center to right center, depending on the type of kid. I had to think more right center myself, but if you have that approach, you can cover that 2/3 middle of the plate. And that's one thing I think kids miss on. And obviously, like you said, the younger kids, they're going to probably be walking more just because of some of the pitchers that the younger age groups. But you're right, though. I mean, you have to be more aggressive. You have to have the ability to hit, and you have to be aggressive on the middle away. At minimum, the middle inside, middle away, and middle pitches, you should be doing damage on those no matter what. And especially a type of kid, like, if you got a slow thrower at that age group, you're obviously thinking more that right center side of the field. If he's pitching away, inside the faster thrower, you're thinking center to right center to kind of get that bat head out front more. But I agree with you 100% on that aspect. But for me, it's more of a personality trait, and kind of having to get them to understand, like, hey, it's kill, kill, kill. We're kill, kill, kill first. It's not, well, let's see if he gives me a pitch to hit. And I'd always would blow my mind. One thing that was really popular in the 90s when I was growing up is people would say, take it till you get a strike so you can see what he has. And I'm like, I always thought that was stupid then, and I still think it's stupid now. It's like, if I get a good first pitch to hit, I'm going to do some damage. I'm going to try to hammer that damn thing.
No, I agree 100%. I think that's just the best way to develop the hit tool, is you have to swing and you have to be able to hit certain pitches. And I think it's going to open up their eyes to, I can actually handle that pitch that's a ball off, as opposed to thinking that I can't get there.
Yep.
One of our better players, super highly ranked, this past weekend was down there, and he came up to me and said, "Hey, like, is my swing too steep?" And I'm like, "No, you're not pulling the trigger. You're letting go. You're in a 2-strike count, probably 8 out of 9 times. Why is that? Because you're letting too many pitches go by you." And this is even a high school player where he was thinking it was a mechanical fall. So it kind of ties in together what we talked about earlier. There's nothing to do mechanical wise. I'll take him in the cage right now and he'll bang 8 out of 10 line drive back net, popping it. And then getting the game, he's just not pulling the trigger enough. So for his standpoint, be more aggressive. If you watched the Dodgers game last night, the first 3 hitters swung at the first pitch and then went single, double, and I think homer to follow that up. And they ambushed the heck out of the pitcher. But they had a hitters meeting about being almost too passive, too patient, where it's, hey, when you get in that box ready to go, if you give you that first one over the plate, be ready to do damage with it. And I think a cool thing that I started to tell a lot of the hitters that I was able to be around them and watch them in games is try to zone up where you want the ball. So if you want the ball over the middle of the plate, all right, that's my zone. I don't care if it's hard or soft. Just if that ball rises over the middle of the plate, do damage with it. Because as opposed to when these guys start to try to guess what pitch is coming, oh, I think he might throw a curveball here, they're going to be off time. So it's, hey, you're good enough. Your eyes will recognize. But now let's just zone up. I'm looking for something maybe a little elevated over the middle of the plate, whether it's a curveball, changeup, fastball, whatever it is, be ready to do damage with that spot. And if it doesn't arrive in that spot, then you just take the pitch there. And I mentioned that to a couple of the guys this past week, and it really helped them understand of they're looking for their pitch, not necessarily fastball, curveball, breaking ball, but they're looking for the pitch in their zone, ready to do damage with, and then letting the eyes dictate fast or slow as they have a hump in it, whatever it is from that standpoint. And it really helped them simplify what they were looking for from that thing. So I think that was a big bonus to them.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned earlier, too, about doing soft toss and stuff kind of before games before you go into BP. We actually will do screen toss a lot. Sometimes, like if guys are struggling, we'll do screen toss only instead of regular BP. Is at the 17-year-old age level, everybody has egos in this game, but every guy's trying to pull everything. And it's like, and when you were talking about it earlier, like you want to be a 5 o'clock hitter, you want to be a 7 o'clock hitter. And this is one thing we were talking about social media before is guys are throwing, easy 30 to 40 mile an hour BP. You can get away with dropping the backside or getting bigger on your attack angle and kind of getting loopy because the ball's not going to be there. It's not going to be quick. You're not getting the cut. You're not getting the movement. You're not getting that high spin rate and the quick reaction time. To be a 7 o'clock hitter, you have to do things that are out of your comfort zone. And so we'll do a lot of whole rounds, low and inside, high and inside, and then go straight into low and away, high and away. You can't do that unless you are the man at throwing BP. Most people struggle doing that. I mean, our college BP throwers, they didn't know where it was going half the time anyway. They were just hoping it was somewhere right around the plate. But that's the thing is for me with that mentality is I've got to understand what I'm trying to do, how I'm trying to do it. But when it comes to that pregame routine, and approaches, I will say that the majority of the time kids don't have an approach. And like you said, just saying something simple as that is looking for the ball over the middle of the plate. It's like, it sounds so simple, but it's not simple at the same time because it's very easy to overthink in this game. It's very easy to kind of think about this last at bat, and what you're going to try to do, or this pitcher and that pitcher. But we got to look back on it. The game's hard as it is. We got to have that simple approach of trying to cover the middle of the plate and wherever the pitch is at, like you said, hard, slow, whatever, seeing spin, seeing the hump. We're going to be able to have that attack in that direction. And that's what's important, which actually, I'm going to ask you this question, Adam. So we were talking about this a little bit before about the biggest flaws a lot of youth hitters have. Staying through the baseball is a big problem for youth guys. What are specific things that you do to kind of help them kind of learn to stay through the baseball instead of whether it's lead arm mechanics flying out of the zone or they're kind of cutting and rolling over really early? What do you do to kind of help them with that?
So there's a couple of different things. We've adapted the split grip to kind of really help them stay through the ball because you split your hands. There's a space in between for guys that don't know. And now you're really in control of both hands. So you can take the knob in the direction and the barrel is going to follow through. Mm-hmm. And you'll feel as my lead arm, say if I'm a righty, my left arm, am I pulling that knob across my chest or am I staying down the path and staying through the ball? And once again, the ball will dictate what's going on. So if you're topping a lot of balls, side spin to the left, hooking, or if you're filleting it to the right, you're not staying through the ball. You're actually cutting it instead of catching that ball square. Another good thing is like plyo balls or a little bit heavier balls. If you're hitting in those and they're clipping, you're not staying through the ball. So simply go to that. You can use your regular bat. They don't have to be super heavy, just have a little oomph in it. So when you do hit, they're supposed to come off flush. If they don't come off flush, that tells you right there that I'm clipping the ball. And so if I'm clipping a plyo ball, I'm probably going to clip the baseball too. Another one, So we have the grips there. We have the flat bat. I know you have the paddle there too. If I'm not palm up, palm down at contact, then I'm not going to hit that ball flush, whether it's a tennis ball or a foam ball, whatever it is that you use. And if I'm not catching it flush, I'm rolling over too soon, or I'm pulling off the ball with my front side. So I'm not catching that thing square as possible. But It all starts, in my opinion, with lead arm mechanics, lead arm, lead shoulder, all that mechanics there. And I would say 85% of the guys, when they have issues, their ego will get involved. They get some strength, and their front side is going to want to pull off to go. And so when that front side goes off, like we talk about all the time, now my swing goes, if I'm a righty again, working towards the third base coach and around like a merry-go-round, as opposed to staying through like a Ferris wheel of staying on that right path down the line back where the pitch came from. And so the lead arm mechanic stuff, do you rip the front arm open to get the barrel there, or do you stay close and let the barrel work under the shoulders to stay through the ball? It's probably one of the things we talk about the most here is just direction, because pitch always will come from the same place for the rest of your time you ever play baseball. It always comes from the pitcher's mound. It never comes from third base or first base. So if your swing's working around, and we'll tell it all the time, is if your swing's working off the tracks, then you're not going to have a successful swing except on the inside pitches. That's the only time. And so when that scout report gets out, you're about to get eaten alive. So you have to develop a swing that stays through the ball. But those are three things to do to really focus, and then go back and let the ball be the feedback more than anything, because you've got to understand when that ball goes to the right side, don't be happy that it went opposite field. You better make sure it's driven to that right side. I think if I'm righty again, I think too many people work in their opposite field rounds, because we both played. Your first round's always away. What ends up happening, I think a lot of, even at the college level, is even at the pro level too, guys get in there and just try to fillet it that way or push it that way. I've been telling guys lately, especially the older guys that get to hit BP on the field, because it's kind of rare sometimes these days, is make sure you're driving that ball. Even right out the gate is, okay, maybe it's not 100%, but I'm driving through that ball. I'm not just filleting little pop-ups to right field, because you're not getting anything done out of that. You're actually creating a bad habit of just filleting that way. So now it's, hey, I'm working away. All right, so I'm going to think right center gap, and I'm going to try to pound that zone. I'm going to go right over the second baseman's head, and I'm trying to pound that there. If I get 6 swings, I want to try to pound it 4 out of 6. If not, if I get a little on top, a ground ball. If I get a little under, maybe it'll be a fly ball there. But opposite field rounds have to be taken just like regular swings, because my swing doesn't change. I think a lot of people think that you have an outside swing, an inside swing, a middle swing. No, my swing, I tell guys, should always work through center field. My swing works through center field. If I'm a little early, I'll catch it in front and I'll pull it. If I'm a little late, I'll take it to the right side, but not by trying to push my barrel and manipulate the ball to go that way. And so that goes back to just staying through the ball again. If my focus can be through the center field wall with my swing, I think you're going to see a lot more success from that way. Then after you do your opposite field round, when you go to your middle round, think about, all right, I'm going to try to hit the ball off the center field wall. All these balls, I'm hitting it through the wall, and see what happens, because I think it's going to keep everything in that right center, left center. If I'm a little early, I'll pull it. If I'm a little late, it'll go to that right center gap. And then finish it off with, all right, I'm going to work poolside. But when you work poolside, make sure you're working poolside with backspin. You're not working hoppers in the 6 hole that are those tornadoes, or pulling it down by the third base coach, because it started out fair and then had so much side spin, hook spin, because you got around the ball that it goes foul. Yeah, that it looks cool to the fans, like, oh man, he was all over that one. But really it tells you got out around the ball, as opposed to staying aside and backspinning that ball right there. So that's some of the things we do here. But is that it? I think that's the most common thing that I've seen a lot with a lot of hitters, is a direction issue and a staying through the baseball issue.
Yeah, I agree. I will say direction is the number one thing, besides balance and launch position, which those go hand in hand, obviously, too. Like once we get in, like some guys are starting their swing before their front foot even gets down. And you can't have you're only able to hit one pitch in that scenario, and it better be a 72 mile an hour fastball in a lot of cases. But you're right on that aspect. The ball wants to go where it's pitched. Like you're going to have your most success if the ball's on the middle away or outside. Now, obviously, certain levers and long lever guys, like they can get away with a little bit more. I could get away with pulling middle pitches myself. But if I did it too much, then like you just said, like if I was going out there trying to do that, I would spin off the ball. I'm getting this disgusting top spin. And next thing you know, I can't hit those off-speed pitches away because I can't stay through the baseball. But that's the thing is, like, I always tell guys, like, are you hitting the ball to opposite field or right center field or center field just as hard as you're hitting the ball to left field? You know, you should have a goal that no matter where you're hitting the ball when you're hitting the ball to all fields, you should be hitting it just as hard. And that's the mindset. And, A lot of guys don't want to do drills. They just want to swing, 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 swing. And, how many times can you pull the same outside pitch and think that you're getting better? Mm-hmm. I'll go back to the drill aspect of things. And I always will use this analogy with a lot of guys. Like when we give you a drill, like when we actually start seeing your swing and, like you were talking about, we check out timing, we check out the approach, we check out your balance, we check out some mechanical issues, and then we're trying to fix something. I always will say this, and guys watching on social media, you're not understanding the context, but if you watch a boxer train, he's hitting the speed bag, he's hitting the heavy bag, he's working on different drills, he's working on different things. And then he's obviously sparring a lot too. Boxing sparring would be us being like live game hitting situations for us as hitters. The speed bag, the heavy bag, the footwork, the body movement, the head movement, all of that plays into a factor of that boxer getting into the ring and being successful against his opponent. If he went into the ring trying to throw these huge haymakers and trying to get big on every single thing, he's going to get knocked out and he's going to be left open. The situation is like when I'm working on the speed bag, I'm working for, precision, hand-eye coordination, speed, rhythm, all that stuff. It's the same thing with hitting. Like we have certain drills where it looks like guys are chopping and getting on top of the ball. We have certain drills where guys are trying to get more lift on certain things. As long as we're keeping a good spine angle. But that's the thing is like when we're working on drills, work to alleviate and cure little weaknesses and maintain your strengths and build your strengths, obviously. But you got to understand is like hitting is more than just, see ball, hit ball. Sometimes we have to break it down as simple like that. But we got to understand that we have to have a method to the madness. We have to have a purpose. And I love that you talked about the weighted balls. And we finish every single lesson in the off season with weighted balls, every single one. And it's called 21. So we'll have the best out of 21. Right now, the record's 13 for 21. And we have the back net. You can, as long as you hit the ball in the air to the back net, and I have 16-foot cages. So if you hit to the left side, right side, and it ricochets and gets to the back net, it counts. If it hits the top of the cage and still hits the back net, it counts. If you hit the cage on the line, it counts. And they have to learn to stay through the baseball and stay on the baseball. And sometimes we'll pick them up and we'll do it again just to kind of get them some rhythm and get them some feel of staying through the baseball and that. And that's, to me, if you don't hit weighted balls, I think that should be a part of every single person's program is staying through the baseball.
Yep. No, I totally agree. Now, one thing I want to ask, so from an approach standpoint, because we talked about the approach a lot today, is what would you recommend to a hitter during the game? Like during the game, what does he need to have going through his brain as he's on deck circle as well as when he's up there in the batter's box? Do you want him thinking? Do you want him not thinking? Is it 1, 2, like a couple of small things? What would you kind of recommend to hitter?
That's a great question. I had a kid who's playing for a different fall team, a different organization, the Bulls, and obviously I'm training him. And he's following the LT method, and then his coaches. He hit 400 in the summer, and he struggled during the fall, and his coaches were telling him all these different mechanical cues and all this stuff before going to the plate. And I just don't believe in doing that. I don't think you should be thinking about mechanics. Like at that point in time, if you don't have muscle memory on what you're trying to recite in your head, you're done. It's already over. Like you repeating that is not going to automatically, magically create that muscle memory. Now, obviously, having a certain approach or maybe a little cue of keeping the front shoulder on, those little things are not that big of a deal. But, you got to think, first and foremost, you got to understand what the velocity is. And you got to work on your timing. Like a lot of guys will work on their load and separation, getting their foot down, but they won't actually swing. I'm a big advocate. You have to actually swing on deck. So you're seeing if the barrel's in the zone the same time as the guy that's hitting. Or the same time as that guy's going. I would always take that very seriously as a hitter, and I think there's a lot of guys that miss on that. Number 2 is his off speed in the zone, and I think it's a lot of things like guys like, oh my god, that guy's slider is disgusting. Or this guy's curveball's disgusting. It's like, dude, well, he hasn't thrown it for a strike yet. It's the 4th inning, and you're wanting to swing at this pitch. Like, dude, like spit on that until you actually see it in the zone.
Yep.
And that's another thing is like you have to understand and take away pitches. Like if he's throwing that slide piece, but he's not throwing it for a strike. If he ends up throwing it the 1 or 2 times he throws it for a strike and you take it for a strike, so what? No big deal. He beat the percentage. He beat the game. But that's the thing is like have that approach. And my approach is really simple. It's like, hey, we're trying to hit a line drive and burn the center fielder. Like we're trying to burn that center fielder, whether, it's making them, I like making small adjustments, like guys that have a tendency of pulling off. Let's make the center fielder open to his left a little bit. If the guys are a little behind, okay, let's hit that ball dead center. Let's just make him open to his right a little bit. Obviously, I'm talking as a right-handed hitter right now for those that are listening. but be on time. And that's the thing, is you could be very successful, and your adjustability in your swing, which is the second most common thing besides direction, is adjustability. Like, we'll do a lot of screen toss stuff where I call it chaos drill, and we'll do screen toss change ups, screen toss curveballs, obviously fastballs. I'll try to do some run on for two seam type things. And if I throw them that, if it's an 0-2 count or a 1-1 count and they get a curveball, their adjustability in their head is keep front side on the ball, keep the hands back and up, obviously, because if the hands drop, you're going to get beat. So what I want them to do is, like, we work on that. We think about that stuff in the game. In practice. So in the game, it's 2-2, whatever, and you see that curveball, boom, your subconscious takes over, and you're like, okay, front side on, shoulder back. And obviously, as you know, like, it's a half a second to think like that. But as long as you practice that long enough, you don't have to recite that self to yourself on deck. You're sitting fastball adjust, and that adjustment is based on the muscle memory of what you did beforehand. So if you tell yourself, oh, see the pitch up, or don't swing at the curveball in the dirt, if you're thinking about that, it's more than likely going to happen, as Frank Core said when he was on the podcast back in the day.
So Coach Laird isn't in the third base box yelling, more top hand, head down.
Absolutely not. Yeah, absolutely not. You might just every now and then I'll say, hey, let's be on time, stuff like that. I'll say, hey, let's get ready to go. I like, for those that are listening, if you play against me, if I think a fastball's coming, I'm gonna say, be ready to go here. Let's pull the trigger. I'll say that all the time, and that way they're ready to go. And I tell them that beforehand. And if they tell me to shut up, I won't say anything. You know what I mean? Everything that I say, I want to make sure that I'm helping them, because for the most part, you could tell, and as you know, you could tell the kids that are in their heads too much. And when they're in their heads too much, I won't say a damn thing when they're at the plate. I'll talk to them beforehand, or I'll talk to them after the game and stuff. And when I coach in the summer, I won't start talking about mechanics or anything like that until 3 weeks in the season, because some guys are slow starters, some guys are fast starters, some guys are just, hanging out and having fun. So you kind of got to wait until that third week of the season, kind of start talking about things and breaking things down a little bit.
No, I'm so glad you hit on that, because I think a good thing to think about from either a parent or a coach's perspective is, all right, so when that hitter goes up there and he strikes out, like when he walks back to the dugout, number one, he's disappointed, he's upset, like he's not happy. So now is not the time to go grab him and try to tell him mechanical or, hey, why'd you swing at that? Let him go sit down. Let him get it out of his head, go out there, play defense, because the last thing you want to do is you try to go talk to him. Number one, he's going to block you out. He's not going to listen to you because he's already pissed off. And then number two, he's going to go out to the field and he's going to take that bat with him, and the ball's going to find him. He's going to make an error, and now his day's gotten even worse. So challenge yourself, whether it's parents. Number one, don't come, like we always talk about, don't come down to the dugout and then start asking your kid a million questions about what happened at bat. Stay away. You want to do that stuff after the game, go ahead and do what you got to do there. But from a coaching perspective, one thing that I really harped on and I challenged myself when I was around these older kids is, like, I'm not going to go, that's not the right time to grab them and talk about that at bat. If they want to come talk to me about it later, like, we'll talk about it, but I want it to at least be 1 or 2 innings goes by before we go back to that at bat and say, hey, what happened there? What did you see? What was it? And more than likely than not, it wasn't a mechanical thing. It was, hey, that first pitch was the best pitch and you let it go right down the middle. So you've got to be more aggressive. Or, hey, he hasn't shown he can throw a breaking ball for a strike and you went up there and swung it 3 straight in the dirt. So that's on you. You understand that. But just give the hitter time to get it out of his head. Kind of, like I said, he's pissed off right now. Now is not the time to talk to him. Hey, pat him on the butt. Hey, we'll get him next time. Just be ready to go. Learn from it and go from there. So I'm glad that you were hitting on that, because there is a difference in building your mechanics almost in the batting cage and then what you're working on, where when that game comes, it's number one, you got to compete. The competitiveness has to come out of you. And now it goes back to approach, seeing the ball, being on time. And then the mechanics will be the last thing that comes out of that thing. Because in games, it very rarely that you can make that magical adjustment that's just going to make you click, unless it's, hey, your front shoulder's flying off. I keep seeing your chest when I'm coaching third. You keep flying off the ball. Challenge yourself to stay on it and go right center with it. Boom. There's a simple, easy adjustment that made it work for him. So I like to try to keep it simple, just like you do when I'm talking to hitters about if I'm coaching third or coaching first, or if I'm in the dugout, of number one, be on time. It all starts there. So be on time, be ready to go, be ready to pull the trigger. And then after that, it's you get 2 strikes on you. All right, do what you can to do to battle. I recommend all guys when they get to 2 strikes is try to choke up. That, in my opinion, it just gives you back control. Barry Bonds did it last night. Corey Seager did it. The video you sent earlier, Corey Seager hit a bomb last night with it choked up just to get more back control. It doesn't make you less of a man. I think so many kids think like, oh, I'm not strong enough to swing this bat. No, we're not saying that. But when you choke up, you have control of your barrel. And you can feel it just like when you do split grips or you go one-hand drills, like you feel exactly where the barrel is. So that's why we do it. And I gave an approach to the kid, and we've talked about it a little bit before, but with the 2 strikes of challenge yourself to shrink the zone instead of expand the zone. When you expand the zone, you're going to start chasing a lot of those sliders in the dirt because you're taught expand the zone, don't get called out by the umpire. Yeah, we end up swinging a crap and you're running down the first base line like, dang it, there I am again swinging at that stuff, as opposed to really challenging yourself to, hey, I'm going to shrink this zone. I'm going to make him come in this area right here. More times than not, what are they trying to strike us out with 2 strikes? All speed pitch. So by shrinking it, I think you're going to be right there and seeing that ball a little bit more up and not chasing as much as I'm committing to the pitch because I don't want to leave it up into the umpire's hands. So there's just a few things in game what you can really try to focus on to take that game to the next level of being gamers, like we talk about on the here, is when kids can hit, they just naturally have a feel for hitting, and you can see it right away. You don't have to be a super scout. You can just watch a game and know, like, all right, he's spitting on those pitches. He's not missing his pitch. Like, the kid is a hitter. I don't care sometimes what his mechanics look like. Is if he can hit, he can hit. And that's where Craig Counsell, Dustin Pedroia, all the craziest stances you've ever seen, they're in the big leagues for a reason. Euclid, same thing. They were just really good at having feel in the batter's box. And unfortunately, you can't really teach that sometimes. And you can have mechanics and drills and all this stuff, but if you just can't make it click, and you just have to continue to work on it and maybe challenge yourself a little bit more in batting practice with its fastball curveballs, or get on the hack attack against the velo machine. And I was seeing JP Aaron Sebia put something up the other day. He played at Tennessee and played a couple years in the big leagues. And he mentioned, like, it was the Dodgers were hitting live off the hack attack on the field. And he goes, it's funny, whenever I was playing, I ran away from that thing. Like, I hated it. I didn't like it because I was uncomfortable. He said, looking back now, like, that was my biggest regret, was not hitting off that more because I was uncomfortable, but I should have spent a lot more time on that because that's game-like stuff. And I remember even when we used it at South, sometimes I hated hitting that thing. I got in my own head and used to tell myself, like, oh, it's going to make me get in a slump. Like, I don't need to hit this curveball. It's going to make me get in a slump, as opposed to thinking the opposite of compete against this freaking thing and challenge yourself. And once I got into professional ball, we used it with the White Sox a lot, and I used it in the off season. And I developed to love it, man. It was just so much more of a competitive, like, game-like approach. And I would tell myself, I'm going to try to go 3 out of 5, 3 out of 5 on the barrel, 3 out of 5. I don't care where it goes in the cage, just try to barrel it up. And I think I saw a lot more success come from it because I was willing to be uncomfortable, basically.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's good stuff right there, man. I can't stress enough about, being able to listen and soak up the knowledge that you just said, and guys to understand, like, guys like Adam, guys like myself, we've been through it. We've had this approach. We've had these things. And I think the biggest thing that you said right there that is, some people are going to like, what is shrinking the zone? Because you're 100% right. Like, you start expanding the zone too much, you're chasing crap out of the zone. Like I was saying earlier, just because we're trying to hit the balls all over the plate and even an inch or so off the plate doesn't mean that we're going to try to expand. If this guy's calling chalk to chalk, we're not sitting there thinking, oh, I'm going to swing at everything. Like, that's just not a right approach. You got to set your spot. This is your approach. This is the part of the plate I'm going to attack, and be consistent and be committed to it. That's money stuff right there, especially challenging yourself to get uncomfortable. All the great people, all the successful people in the world, they say, comfort's the enemy. And that the same applies for it comes to hitting. Like, you got to do the things that you're not comfortable with. You got to do the things you suck at. You do the things that you suck at, you're going to get better, period, sooner or later. Yeah. That's awesome stuff, man. Well, I think we're going to go ahead and close out right here, Adam. I think that was this is a great episode right here, talking about hitting approaches, talking about youth approaches, and some of the hitting flaws. This is a lot of good nuggets here for guys to listen to.
Yeah, I was excited we were able to do this one, man. It was just, like I said, it's basically just us hanging out at the facility talking about different things that are going on. And we haven't really ever dove into like a hitting one, just kind of covering all aspects. So I was glad that we were able to sit down and do this. And I think the listeners are going to really pick out a few things that, hey, let's start trying this and taking it over. And I think we covered a lot of good stuff in this one, man.
Absolutely, brother. Yeah, man. Well, hey, guys, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure you guys leave that 5-star review. And until next time, we'll see you guys later.